The concierge didn't look up at first, just heard the footsteps, soft but deliberate, then caught the reflection in the marble. A man in a worn black suit, hair slightly tousled, walked toward the desk. Around his neck, a wooden cross swung gently with each step. The lobby was quiet, jazz low in the background. A champagne glass clinked somewhere behind them. "Sir," the concierge said, eyes finally rising. "Religious symbols of that nature are discouraged here." There was no anger in his voice, just polished distance. Keanu paused. His gaze held steady, calm but firm. "Discouraged," he said, voice low. "Or disapproved?" The concierge hesitated. "You're free to interpret however you like, Mr. Reeves, was it?" Guests nearby shifted. A woman blinked up from her phone. A child stopped mid-sip of his drink. Keanu didn't move. He only nodded once, slowly. Narration lingers, but what no one knew then was that a quiet storm had just been invited inside. The concierge watched him disappear into the elevator, but the tension remained, suspended in the air like a held breath. Minutes passed, then murmurs started. A guest near the lobby bar leaned toward his companion. "That looked like Keanu Reeves," he said quietly. The other shrugged, unsure, but the name had already spread. And with it, discomfort. Behind the scenes, the staff was buzzing. In the break room, a junior manager stared at the check-in footage, freezing the frame where Keanu stood quietly at the desk. "This is bad," he whispered. "He's wearing a mic, look, right here on the collar." His voice cracked under pressure, more fear than protocol. Years of polished discrimination had made the hotel feel untouchable. An older black professor turned away under the excuse of an unconfirmed booking. A young Latina couple stopped 3 times by security just for verification. Quiet humiliations, all swept under velvet carpets. The policies were never stated outright, but they lived in memos, phrases like preserving brand identity and guest image consistency. One document circulated internally, even named visible religious display as a potential disruption to modern luxury standards. It had been signed by the regional director. Down a corridor near the ballroom, Keanu stood beside a woman in a modest navy blazer. Her badge identified her as press, though faded. Her voice was low. "My sister used to work here. Got fired after wearing her rosary to work." Her eyes shifted around, cautious. They said it was making some guests uncomfortable. "I still have the emails." She showed him the screen. He didn't speak, just nodded slowly. His silence was heavier than outrage. At housekeeping, a maid passed a folded towel to a coworker and whispered, "They're not going to like this." She meant management, but also meant they had crossed the wrong guest this time. The tension in staff conversations changed from loyalty to fear. Something had cracked. Upstairs, Keanu's reservation remained untouched. He hadn't demanded upgrades, hadn't spoken to anyone with authority. And yet, his presence shifted the building's energy. Not because of fame, but because he refused to shrink. The camera in the lobby caught every second of it. The way he stood, hands at his sides, eyes level with the man who tried to make him small. They had mistaken silence for submission. But faith, like dignity, doesn't beg for approval. It simply waits, calm, still, undeniable, until the world can't look away anymore. The boardroom was colder than usual, not from air conditioning but from tension. Thick, wordless, breath-held tension. The hotel had tried to contain it. PR scrambled behind closed doors, muttering damage control strategies, drafting neutral statements that meant nothing. Apologize privately, deny publicly. One officer whispered, pacing by the window. But it was too late. The emails had surfaced. The footage had gone viral. The hashtags, hashtag crossed out, hashtag elegance or exclusion, were everywhere. Now, a small sea of reporters sat shoulder to shoulder, cameras blinking red, all pointed toward the front of the room. Osto Dikwa sat at the edge of a long glass table, back straight, suit ironed, voice trembling just slightly as he spoke. "It wasn't personal," he said. "We merely enforced dress code standards." His throat shifted. Brand consistency is essential in luxury hospitality. His eyes tried to hold control, but his jaw betrayed him. He blinked too often. The smile he wore cracked like glass under heat. A reporter raised an eyebrow. Another glanced down at her notes and sighed audibly. In the back, someone muttered, "Spin." Then came the pause, long and heavy, broken only by the sound of Keanu's footsteps entering from the hallway. No entourage, no lawyer, just him, hoodie, cross, and all. He nodded politely to no one in particular and stepped forward. "I won't take long," Keanu said quietly, eyes sweeping the room before landing on Osto. "I came here for peace. I didn't want attention. I wore this cross for someone I lost, someone who believed kindness still mattered, even when it wasn't returned." His voice never rose, but it carried. Luxury is not built on exclusion. Dignity can't be filtered. And faith, he paused, letting the silence say what words couldn't, should never feel like a disruption. Osto shifted. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He looked like a man grasping for footing in a room that had turned into water. No one interrupted, not even management. The silence around him wasn't passive. It was judgment, wordless but heavy. The stillness screamed louder than any rebuke. One reporter whispered, not even bothering to mute her mic, This is going to burn the brand." Cameras zoomed in. Phones went up. Osto lowered his eyes. Keanu nodded once to the former staffer who had shared her sister's emails, offering quiet thanks. Then he turned to leave. No press conference, no statement, but just before exiting, a hot mic caught his last words, spoken more to himself than anyone else. "Faith doesn't need validation, but truth deserves daylight." A day after the hearing, Osto was gone. No formal announcement, no press release, just a quiet absence behind the marble desk he once ruled. A leaked photo surfaced online. Him, in a wrinkled shirt, sitting on the hotel's stone steps, watching the revolving doors spin without him. His suitcase rested beside him. He looked smaller now, not older, just emptied. He stared down at his phone, scrolling through headlines he couldn't escape. His name was there again and again. Gatekeeper of discrimination. The face of filtered faith. Elegance exposed. He dialed a number. Straight to voicemail. Tried another. Same. As a neighbor passed him on the sidewalk, they met eyes for half a second. Then she looked away. Inside the hotel, the atmosphere had shifted. The staff chapel, once shuttered to maintain neutrality, now glowed with soft candlelight. A maid stood quietly inside, lighting a wick with trembling hands. Her uniform was crisp, but her face was calm, no longer guarded. At the lobby, a Sikh businessman adjusted his turban with pride. A woman passed wearing a hijab embroidered with gold thread. A young man walked in with a Star of David necklace in full view. No one stopped them. No one even looked twice. The policy hadn't changed on paper, but the room had. Osto's apartment was quiet that evening. Dust on the kitchen counter. A single framed photo tilted on the mantel. Him shaking hands with the hotel's founder years ago, back when control still felt like character. A letter waited on the table, cream-colored, handwritten, addressed simply. To Osto. He opened it with care, expecting scorn or apology. Inside, a single sentence. "People remember how you made them feel. That's your legacy. Kr." He stood still for a moment, staring at the words, then let the paper fall from his fingers. He walked to the window and looked out, not for answers, but for something quieter. Maybe clarity. Far from the city, Keanu stood alone on a grassy hill, the wind moving gently through the trees. In front of him was a small wooden marker. He knelt, placing the same cross from the hotel around it. No ceremony, no cameras, just a moment of silence. Some battles are not fought in courts, but in quiet acts of defiance. And some symbols are not worn for display, but for remembrance. The screen fades to black. You never lose power when you choose dignity. You reclaim it.